Hello and welcome to Marketing Solutions for Local Law Firms, the podcast that provides you with all the latest digital marketing tools, tips, and strategies you will need to implement in order to stay ahead of your competition. If you are looking to substantially increase your caseload in the next 6 months, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's the host of our show, the local business guy himself, Frank Deming.
Hello, everyone. This is Frank Deming, the local business guy. Welcome to another episode of Marketing Solutions for Local Law Firms. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day, everyone. I hope you guys are having a rockin' week thus far. Today is Meet the Attorney, and I have a great attorney for you as always. We're going to be talking about something that has never been talked about thus far on this show since I've been doing the Meet the Attorney series. And we're going to be talking about business law. And the person that I have allocated for you to talk about this is none other than the great Jonathon and Nicole. How you doing, Jonathon?
I'm doing great, Frank. How are you today?
Loving life. I am glad that you were able to have the time to discuss what you do and how you help businesses out there. But before we get into all of that kind of crazy stuff, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, well, you introduced me. I'm Jonathon. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing since 2005. I'm a business attorney. And so what that means is I help individuals and, entrepreneurs, small companies, medium-sized companies with their business needs. And that could be litigation, that could be transactional, it could be contract-based, corporate, kind of all things in those areas.
Okay. Now, I have very little knowledge about I see a lot of business law attorneys, but I have very little knowledge. So enlighten me a little bit as to what kind of cases you usually take on. Is it like, you mentioned contract, I heard you on that. So like what kind of like contract disputes of people, not paying and stuff like that, or does it go deeper?
Yeah. So I like to split it up between, litigation cases, which are what you think of as, typical going to the courthouse, lawsuits, defense attorney, plaintiff's attorney, things like that. And then I've got what I call more my sort of transactional and corporate side, which is, writing documents and deals and things like that. So on the litigation side, it could be a lot of things. It could be something as simple as I've got a customer who has an invoice that's unpaid and need to go and enforce a breach of contract action. It could be something more complicated, which could be maybe a fraud representation in a business deal, or it could be a violation of some kind of business statute. And what I also kind of lump in business side could be anything that the business has an interest in. So that might mean they've got a real estate matter, or they're trying to go and stake a claim to some property or defend some property or something like that. But I do plaintiff and defense side. So I've got cases where my client gets sued for something. And that could be just kind of the flip side of those types of things. On the corporate side, that could be anything involving a contract negotiation or coming up with a new contract. They say, I've got something I've been doing for years. I never written down pen to paper. Let me get it in writing. So I'll help them formulate a contract. It could be a negotiation in a business deal. So the other side is, they have some kind of goal and they're trying to get there and they're apart and they're trying to figure out how to do it. I can help with that, advising rights on that. And then ultimately kind of writing up the agreements or transaction or deals, anything like that needs to be done.
Mm. Now you mentioned a couple of things with the contract. So out of curiosity, a lot of times these days things are outsourced. And let's say there's a contract dispute with an outsourcing company from, England or whatever. Do you help with those type of things or doesn't work?
Yeah. And, that's funny. I can think of a recent case I had where I represented a company from New York City, basically a company that imports products from China and from Hong Kong. And they had been sued in California So I'm a California attorney, but also admitted in Missouri and Kansas. And so they had been sued by a supplier who was out of China, but filed suit in federal court in California. And so my job was to defend my client. And it was not a great case. This defendant had, or rather this plaintiff had tried in Delaware earlier, and they got dismissed there. And then I was able to help get a good resolution and get the case dismissed in California as well. And so, that's kind of an example of somewhat of an international situation. And if that had gone any further, I probably would have been taking a flight over to China to work on the case.
Really? So your services extend up until that, even taking a flight and going to another country?
Yeah, I didn't have to go that far to figure out logistically what would need to be done. But there was a clause in the contract that said that if they had to, it would have been in arbitration in Hong Kong, which is something I would have worked on for sure.
Awesome. Now, what is the sweet spot? Like, what are there? Is a particular industry that you like? I know you business law, but is there a particular style of business that you enjoy working with?
For me, it always comes down to the people. I don't care what your business is, as long as you're doing something that's within the bounds of the law. But I like to work with good people. And so to me, it can be anything. I've got clients who are in healthcare, clients who are in construction, clients who are in, kind of import export, clients who are in, pharmaceutical space. And so there's some certain detail that I learn or already know about a lot of those industries. But a lot of the times, the legal issues that they're facing are, at least the skill set is pretty transferable. So I just try to align myself with clients, to the extent I can be choosy about that and picky about that. I just want to make sure I'm working for good people who've got the right intent and right motives.
Okay, well, that's cool. And what about size of companies, like mid-size, small company? What's your sweet spot?
Yeah, I mean, sweet spot. That's a good question. I like to give really direct service, and so what happens is I have a lot of, I would call that they're either solo entrepreneurs or they've got pretty small companies where they might have 5 to 10 employees. But I've represented others, who've been more kind of mid-sized companies. The sweet spot, though, is probably on a smaller side, just because, my accessibility and, can kind of get my head around, what they need and all that. My former life as a big firm attorney, which I did for 15 years, I was representing the biggest companies out there. So I've done that too.
Yeah, you mentioned that before we hit record, we were talking a little bit about that. So I want to bring that topic back since we're on the air here. So you stepped out on your own during the pandemic. Was that correct?
That's right.
And
yeah.
What made you do that? What made you make that step?
Yeah, well, that's kind of where it all starts. It's funny. I still look back and it's quite a jump I took, when I think about how that happened. But, it was about July of 2020, and I'd been a few months into the pandemic, working remotely with my large firm at that point. Everybody's trying to figure out what this new normal looks like. And I'm kind of looking around and, just with a combination of the shifted mindset, from, well, what am I doing and what do I need to be doing on a daily basis? Not just from, financial requirements for income, but, let's think about what's motivating me and how do I want to operate? And, you get a taste of that kind of working remotely, that freedom, some of that, and then start to realize how there are other parts of my life that I probably was neglecting a little too much because I was stuck in an office a lot. And so I'm thinking, okay, there's got to be a way to make this work where I can keep doing what I like to do. And then figuring out, okay, I can work for myself. I can generate, these clients. I can get this stuff going. And there's just no going back now.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hey guys, I hope you guys are enjoying today's content. While I have you on here, I want to introduce you to a promo that we have going on for the spring of 2024 for all legal practices throughout the U.S. I have an outstanding offer that we've never been able to offer before, but we want to do it because you have been an avid listener. We're only promoting this to people who listen to the show. So if you're an attorney and you are an avid listener to the show and you're thinking about possibly opening your own practice, you want to pay attention to this announcement. We are offering a full website with hosting, SSL certificate, online booking service, online appointment management, and more, and much, much more. With a 1-year maintenance, all for $2,250. That's $2,250 one-time fee, and you have a full-fledged website. If you want to know more about this, just give us a call at 888-416-7752 or send us an email at info@lbmsllc.com. Just make sure that you mentioned that you heard it on the show, and we'll definitely get you that discount. So with that, I'm going to bring you back to the content. Yeah. Once you have a taste of it, it's something that you don't want to leave. Trust me, I've been there, done that myself.
Right.
So what I know it's been it's been 3 years now, 4 years. What has been your biggest success stories? I mean, this show is all about positivity. What was the biggest success story where you felt you did the best for your client?
Well, I mean, that case I was just talking about was a great one because,
okay,
and I'll go into it a little more why that one was so great. The client, they had already won in Delaware. And so they're kind of looking at me like, well, this should be pretty easy to do because you can just point everything ahead of Delaware. I said, well, guys, it's not that easy. They're trying to get another bite at the apple. We're going to try and get all these arguments before the court. And then we had a lot of back and forth with, some details, some really close partnership with the client, which is really positive to have that, a lot of support from them. And then I was able to go in and, the motion I filed was pretty much granted out of the gate by the judge. And what was funny is one of the opposing attorneys on the other side was from my old law firm. And we kind of figured that out halfway through. Great guy, super positive, professional person, great to work with. But it was nice to get just that little bit of victory, obviously for the client, but for myself to say, right, well, I beat one of the old guys, which is nice.
How ironic is that?
Yeah, it was nuts, especially because it was a case out in LA, and that's a huge legal industry out there. But it's a small world, really, in a lot of ways. But that's a good success. And then, I just like these other ones where I'm helping. A lot of times, if I'm helping new businesses get started, to see them get some of their own success pretty quick. And so that could mean I help them with corporate formation, or help them figure out, some employment agreements or independent contractor agreements, anything like that. And then to see them go on, and then actually their business is run and they're making their money, they're helping people, they're growing, they're building all that. It's nice to be able to be a part of starting that. And I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. And, just kind of the one-on-one or the two-on-one client contact and being available and servicing clients, in a way where they're feeling like they're getting their needs met and they can reach out to me with questions. It's just a great, really just inspirational feeling to do that. Because, really at the end of the day, that is why I became a lawyer, was to help people, navigate this kind of, labyrinth of laws out there that a lot of people have no concept about. And it's just really, it's a positive thing to be able to do that for folks.
Yeah. And how are you getting these opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I started out, I just took the plunge. I just jumped off the edge and said, okay, I know I've got some folks out there. Let's see what I can do. And, it took a few months, for anything to pick up, and it still was just kind of an odd time. And then I got one, pretty big client, and that has just really snowballed into other clients. So a lot of it has been referral based. So existing clients referring new clients, or existing clients coming, with repeat work for new cases. It can also just be, other folks in my network who are not clients, but who I call like my referral base. And, they say, hey, if you've got an issue, talk to Jonathon. So I get a lot that way. I'm actually just now, though, starting to, kind of dig into some more, marketing specific things. So working on a new website, working on digital marketing, trying to get those things out so that as blessed as I am to have a referral base, what I really want is to get strangers, people who just, look up business attorney and find me, or are able to get some kind of lead to me that doesn't come directly from me or somebody in my network.
Yeah. Do you have a team? How's that? How are you structured right now?
Yeah, so I'm starting to do that. I've got a small marketing team here, two folks who are working on that, with me, and it's all kind of happening at the same time. I've got a separate web designer and graphic designer, so we're putting it all together. I actually didn't start with a website. I just haven't gotten around to it, which is a great thing. But I figure I'm leaving a lot on the table. So I know that traffic's out there, and talking to the digital team, even before we really got started working, they were doing their own research and said, oh yeah, there's an opportunity here. We think we can get you there. So I'm just in the process now of trying to get everything lined up with Google Business Profile and getting all that stuff, really dialed in to get a launch done pretty soon.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And what about for your when you do get a flood of people, you have the ability to scale. You have paralegals in your team. Do you have anything like that?
Yeah. So what I use mostly are contract attorneys, and I do nothing goes out of the firm without me looking at it. It's just not set up that way. This is all internal attorneys, and so they work for me. They're not working for a client. Some of their work may directly, end up as client work, but there's only one of me, and so I've got days where I have to push off something to another attorney. And so I've got, so I actually just hired a really great one recently who I used earlier this month. And basically it's a setup so that if a project comes in, I know that I've got somebody who is, a 10 plus, year experienced attorney who's qualified, who I can say, okay, can you get me a draft of this? And I give them the project, I give them the materials, and then they flip it around. Then I just kind of put the finishing touches on it, with my approval and review and everything. And so I've got a couple of those contract attorneys, they're in the wings, that they're on demand as needed. And so that's the eventual structure, is to, once I get all this digital marketing dialed in, and let's say there is, a flood of stuff one month, I'm going to have these contract attorneys ready to go, and be able to take that kind of overflow.
Right. Gotcha. Now where is your home base? I mean, you mentioned LA, you mentioned Missouri. What's your headquarters?
Yeah. So I'm in Kansas City. Okay. This is where home is. But, I started my law career in California. I was an attorney in Los Angeles for 8 years, before I moved back in Kansas City. And I was an attorney at that big firm here for 7 years. So that's kind of where you put my two locations. I've got an office in Kansas City, and then I've got one in LA. And it just kind of depends on what month it is, but sometimes the majority of my work is Missouri and Kansas. Sometimes the majority of it's California. It's just a good blend, but I keep active licenses in all three of those states.
Oh, okay. Well, cool. And so would you say most of the cases come from California since it's just a big state, or?
It just depends. I mean, right before we got on this call, I was working on some California stuff, but then later today, I've got a Kansas lawsuit I'm working on. Yesterday was a Kansas lawsuit. So it just varies and depends.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of work out of California. I'll put
No,
it
I
that
hear
way.
you. I hear you. Yeah, it's a huge state, so I can imagine. Out of curiosity, so let's talk about post can pandemic. I was just thinking about this. Because you mentioned all these lawsuits, and you've been in the game over 15 years before you even hung your shingle out. Would you say that after the pandemic, the lawsuits have increased, or is it the same? Like, what's because I've been hearing a lot of law. I mean, I do a lot of digital marketing for attorneys, and I do a lot of interviews on this podcast with attorneys, and I just keep hearing all these lawsuits happening, and a lot of it's been after the pandemic.
Yeah, I think maybe something that happened. I haven't checked this with data, but a theory I've got is, the pandemic did put a lot of lawsuits on hold. And so there was certainly a backlog for a little while. There was some pent up, especially jury trials were not able to happen for a while. And so I know that there was a backlog of those. They have gotten to a lot of those. So I'm not sure that that's the whole explanation, but that's part of it. Is there was a pause in the legal system, and especially in a court system like Los Angeles County, it can take a long time to get a hearing date. Let's say I want to go file a motion for my client. It might not get heard for 6 months or 9 months. It's just a busy court system there anyway. I think another maybe component other than, some kind of backlog from the pandemic is that there's just people thinking, well, we got to get going on it. We got to just go for it because they don't want some other issue that might pause the legal system, to come up. And so they're thinking, like, if we've got some claims, now's the time to do it. Let's not wait. Let's go ahead and go for it. And then there's sort of like a greater factor, which could be, just kind of like the cost of doing business, and this, companies thinking, well, we've got to really protect what we've got now. Let's try and go. And, if we were wronged, let's try and get compensated for that. There's a lot of factors into it.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's been happening so much. I'm going to ask you a question that's pretty. I've asked this question to all the attorneys that come on the show, just out of curiosity. What do you feel separates you from other business law attorneys out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm always trying to hone down on that more and more. I think the one thing that I hear back from clients, or I hear back from my referral basis, is people just like to work with me. And there are definitely some attorneys out there who are great at what they do, but they don't have the best bedside manner. They may not have, or they may not be responsive. They may not be somebody that, not that you have to have this with every attorney, but they may not be somebody you want to sit down with, and have a beer or a coffee. And so what I try to do is I try to balance, my expertise and experience with being personable. Because, even if you're representing a Fortune 5 company, that company is made up of people, right? And so somewhere there's a decision maker, somebody who's got emotions, somebody who's got their own kind of personal interests, that are at issue. And you got to be able to, understand their interests, what factors are motivating them, what things are roadblocks for them. There's a little bit of a kind of psychological component to it. So I try to bring that to, it doesn't come up in every case, or with every client, but that's something I try to do. So it's a certain kind of human sensitivity that I try to bring, because, most of the other stuff, a lot of people can write a breach of contract lawsuit or defend one, right? So what's the X factor? It's the personality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And can you do it for across states? Like, for instance, I'm in New Jersey, and since I know you, I can say, "Hey, John, I need help with this. Can you do that?" Even if I'm in New Jersey and you practice in LA and in Missouri.
It depends on the issue and it depends on the state. And it's funny, I got asked to do something in New Jersey about maybe a year ago on a merger and acquisition matter, and I looked into it, and New Jersey had a specific requirement, but in order to do that type of work, and usually all it is finding a local attorney to be like my sponsor, especially if you're doing something in state courts in litigation. You do what's called pro hoc vice, where you appear for a limited purpose just for that case, and you've got a local attorney who sponsors your pro hoc vice application. When you get into things like contracts, or kind of corporate side, some deal work or things like that, it's a little hazier because you're not going in front of a court, but you still should be admitted in the jurisdiction or get a pro hoc sponsor. So I have done work, other than where I've been admitted. I've done a lot of cases in Florida, done a lot of cases in Texas, and cases in Iowa, just kind of all around. And, I go and get a temporary admission in order to do that.
Oh, okay. So there's a process that you have there. That's what I'm curious, because I'm still amazed that, well, you do it with the contractors. You have the contract lawyers, I'm assuming, but it's amazing. I mean, I'm assuming there's a plan to scale. So if you were to come back on the show, say a year from now, you'd be scaled up and totally different. Like, you have a team with at hand. I'm assuming you have a plan.
Yeah. I mean, if it was going to be, I'm not sure what the timeline is really going to work out to be, but what I would hope in the near future is there's enough intake coming in where I need to have like 3 to 4 to 5 folks helping me out. I'd love to be able to support 3 or 4 or 5 other folks in their own journeys of having kind of independent law work. A lot of these contract attorneys who I work, they're essentially consultants. And so, I'd love to be able to hire, 4 or 5 of those and be feeding them a regular amount of work so that they're able to, just rely on us. So that's the goal, to get to a point where, there's enough of the work coming in, that I have to have these other people to do it. I know just for my own sanity, I want that as soon as possible. Because, as an attorney, I think most of the attorneys would agree, cases can keep you up at night. You're thinking about something. Did I do this one little thing? What about that? Oh my gosh, what if I don't do that? There's a real sort of anxiety component to it, or worrying component to it. But if I've got, 3 to 5 attorneys working with me who I trust and who are, committed, that's going to be the solution there.
Gotcha. I asked you, what made you want to hang out your shingle and everything, but I didn't go back to the beginning. What made you want to become a lawyer in the first place, and why business law?
Yeah, good questions. The original motivation, I think a lot had to do with where I was because I was definitely thinking about it in high school and then in college. Just kind of my natural skills are analysis, writing, speaking, reading, and later have got a lot more toward resolution. And so understanding issues, trying to come up with options to get 2 sides to come together and agree to something. So I sort of have these natural inclinations to the things that people do as a litigator or maybe as a contract corporate side attorney. And so that's really what kind of drove me into doing it. And it was a part of just thinking like, okay, well, these are the things I'm pretty good at. I've gotten, good grades or good comments or remarks about it. So why don't I go ahead and try and convert this into, a law career? And then from there, business law, that's a tough one because I've done a lot of different things over the years. And I still do a lot of different things over the years. And so, what I try to say is I'm a problem solver. And most of the times people's problems are business related that come to me. And so I do try to handle those, but, I've done the random dog bite case, somebody had a dog attack and, helped them out with that, kind of a great settlement on that. And then some other cases involving government entities and, doing kind of very not business related things, almost more constitutional law type work. And that's another thing about being solo. I'm able to take a lot of different type of work and, and practice in areas. Yeah. Especially when you're in a larger firm, you're pretty siloed into one practice area or one industry, but I'm able to do a lot of different things. And so, yeah, business attorney is certainly, what I market, what I promote, what is most of what I do and most of the types of clients that I would like to have.
Right. Yeah, because that's the kind of work you enjoy.
Right.
Awesome. Well, I mean, this is a great information. I was going to ask you about the website, but that's not up yet. So I
almost.
I think you and I are connected on LinkedIn. So I would love to put your LinkedIn information on the show notes here, so people can get a hold of you in case they want to. But if before I let you go, is there anything I did not ask you that you think will benefit the audience?
Oh, great question. Give me a second. Wasn't prepared for that. I mean, one thing you could ask, or I'll just go ahead and speak to it, is, I'm traditional in a lot of ways, but I'm also try to be cutting edge, and so the best thing for that is trying to use really good legal products out there that are tech-based. And so anything I can do that saves my clients time, anything I can do that saves me time, ultimately is going to help both of us. And so, I leverage a lot of, just client portals and just as many electronic solutions as we can. Gone are the days of, sending a courier to somebody's house to sign something and to bring it out. Occasionally that comes up as a requirement, but I try to make things, for my own purposes, as efficient and as, positively tech-based as possible. And then the clients really appreciate that. They pick up on it and they embrace it.
That comes up as a requirement? The courier thing?
There are some things that do require original wet signatures that have to be notarized. Yeah, it's changed a lot. There's so much digital verification now that I think we're eventually going to go away from that. But there are some things that have to be notarized, and you can't do that. They do have an e-notary service that I've seen in a lot of cases, but not all jurisdictions are caught up on it. So yeah, sometimes you still might have to do that.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting. Learn something new every day. That's why I love doing this, guys. I learn these things because I would have thought, because I know about those electronic notary. It's just a software. It's very cheap, so I don't know why you wouldn't.
Right.
Do it, but hey, it is what it is. Sometimes these people are hard to convert. But yeah, this has been great. I mean, it's been a pleasure interviewing you. I think you have a great service, and I would love it if we can help you with this, and just by distributing this podcast to people and having people discover who you are. Hopefully, that will help. And much success to you. I mean, I love success stories like that. You started out on your shingle after during the pandemic, I should say, and here you are, not even with a website, and have the success that you've had. That is something that's outstanding. And for people like myself, we're in awe because we do everything with websites. So
I appreciate those words. Yeah, I try to recognize that every day. Yeah, it's been a great ride, and just getting started is what I like to say.
Yeah, it's a blessing, and we would love to continue monitoring your success throughout the interwebs. Look, and feel free to come back anytime and tell us how different you are a year from now or 2 years from now, whatever it is. And we would love to be here to have a follow-up conversation. But if you're up to that,
I look forward to it.
Awesome. With that, I'm going to put an end to this episode. This has been Frank Deming, the local business guy, and you've just been blessed by the great Jonathon Nicole. Take care, everyone. Until next week. Peace out.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Marketing Solutions for Local Law Firms, the podcast that provides you with all the latest digital marketing tools, tips, and strategies you will need to implement in order to stay ahead of your competition. If you would like to know more about the topic we discussed on the show today, reach out to Frank and his team at 888-416 888-7752 and schedule a discovery call with one of the marketing consultants. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, send an email to podcast@lbmsllc.com and we will put you on the schedule. With that being said, until next week, make it a successful digital marketing day. Peace out.